It's been good to see you again.
Thank you.
And welcome back.
Thank you.
We've not spoken since...
We haven't spoken for some time.
Yeah, for some time.
And I'm not your typical politician. I went in there because I was just disgusted with the way the country was going down. No sense of purpose, no sense of direction, and, no economic plan, So somebody had to come in and, and at least lift the level of debate. And I came number 3 or 4, depending on how you calculate it, that sort of thing. So out of 71, and some people think that is a good outing, but we'll see how this pans out in the end.
What lessons did you learn?
I learned, Nancy, a lot of lessons.
Just give me 2. Top 2.
First of all, about myself, my weaknesses as well as my strengths. That is very important in politics. You should know what you're capable of doing. I don't have the stomach to encourage thugs to go and beat up people. I can never do it, and I told all my supporters, like good luck, even though I don't share much with good luck, but at least one thing, my ambition is not worth the blood of any human being, whether Nigerian or non-Nigerian, that sort of thing. Thuggery, vote buying, vote stealing, intimidation, all of that was going on. And thank goodness some of us refused to be part of that rot. I also learned that this is a great country with huge potentials. I learned a lot about the country. I visited quite a number of places. I know that there's also suffering. There is hunger. There is suffering. Nigerians are frustrated, especially the young people. Their future has been mortgaged, Nancy, and the situation is utterly hopeless. In this country, there's so much impunity. People can move in the night with guns and go and slaughter people. Nobody will be arrested. No questions will be asked. Is this really what a democratic federal nation should be? That is the question we have to ask ourselves. And then you learn a lot about politicians. They'll be looking at you like this, Nancy, and they'll be telling blatant lies. And they just want money. They don't care where you got the money. They just want money. Somebody can turn up in the night and say, oh yeah, go and find a hotel for me to stay. I'm just coming from, you can name any place, anywhere it's coming, I'm your supporter and so on. And then you have to create, you have to learn how to be diplomatic with people. So I didn't realize I could be that diplomatic, but it helped, that sort of thing. And so it's a learning process, and on the whole, I will encourage more and more people to go into politics, because the prize we get for bad leaders is good people standing back and doing nothing and allowing the rot to continue.
But has it really changed? Because you said you came in here to also elevate the level of conversation. But has that been elevated?
Well, we are going to see. But I think that, to be honest with you, in a way, it has been elevated. People are more aware of their rights. People have a better understanding of what the issues are. People also know that there is an alternative. That if these old, recycled people continue their game of destroying this country, there are alternatives. There's a generation of people, I'm not saying they are angels or they are saints, none of the above, but there are people who have the love of the country in their heart. People who are not selfish, people who are not driven by tribal or religious bigotry, but people who love Nigeria as a country. They love every corner of it, east, north, west, and east, and they are ready to sacrifice for the country. There are still people like that. And people who have that endowment, moral as well as intellectual, to compete with any leader in the world. We have them in this country. There are people who can govern China, who can govern America. We have them here in this country. They have that capacity. It's just that the system does not give them a chance. It requires you to have stolen billions of naira from the public treasury. You hide it somewhere, and you start bribing people up and down, and start buying support, and so on and so forth. This is the name of the game. And I think Nigerians are getting very tired of it, Nancy. Very tired.
Let's go to the discussion of the day. You know, the state of the economy, the state of the nation. In the past few weeks, seeing what's been happening, I've not really been happy, you know. And they say, okay, you should not bring your emotions and all of that. But we are all human beings, and we see what's happening around the country. Precisely the security situation.
Sure.
Sometimes it's just that I'm also a news person.
Sure.
I want to even block myself from the news, because anytime I did a video, was it 2 weeks ago?
Yes.
Anytime I tune in to any news or I'm reading anything online, it's negative and bad news. Either this person was kidnapped here, or Abuja Kaduna Road is this, or people just, I saw a man yesterday on the news from, is it Zamfara or so, or was it Adamawa? His 7-year-old daughter was kidnapped in front of his house. Nothing has been said. What's going on in Zamfara? Kidnappings going on up and down, different levels of banditry, lawlessness. And the worst part of it that depresses me the more is just what you said. No accountability, nothing is happening. Either when they kill someone or kill people, after we see the police apprehending those people. But this thing continues, and I'm asking myself, why is this so? Though President Buhari said in Jordan that the lack of inclusion is increasing banditry. And I'm just torn. I'm like, is this how Nigeria would continue? Anytime you tune on the TV already, is kill, die. When you see a news bulletin, the first 10, 15 minutes, kill, die, kill, die. I'm like, what exactly is happening in this country?
I think we're reaching, Nancy, what I would call a state of anomie, of moral as well as legal breakdown of the Nigerian system. This morning, a young man calls me, you know, a CBN staff actually, and I say, oh, how are you? How is our friend? We have a mutual friend. He said, oh, don't you know, in the weekend, the armed robbers shot him. He's in a critical condition.
This morning?
This morning, before I came to see you, actually, as I was coming here. You know, he went to take petrol station. He went to a petrol station to just buy some fuel, and he got caught up. Armed robbers trying to rob the petrol station, and you know, he just was there by that unfortunate period, and they just shot at him, and he's in a critical condition. In fact, my body went. He's such a fine young man, and my body just went cold, and so we are now the kidnap capital of the world. Anybody from anywhere can walk across the border with a military submachine gun, go into a village and wipe off the whole people there, women and children. Nobody will ever arrest him. Nothing will ever be done. Because it seems to me that there's a conspiracy to allow people to just infiltrate our borders, you know. But some people have a vested interest in allowing that. And a lot of lawlessness is taking place. Zamfara, it's partly also because there's gold there, there's precious stones. And so there's a resource element, you know, to the conflict, apart from, of course, ethnic and sectarian factors. You know, in Sudan, they once tried this, and it worked very well. If people are fighting over precious stones, because they need to take them illegally, smuggle them out of the country, and so on, the Central Bank of Sudan, the Bank of Sudan, actually opened a new window, whereby anywhere you bring gold or precious stones, they will buy it. Because you know you can make gold part of your reserves. And it is very important. In fact, it will back up your currency. So instead of people killing and shedding blood, let them bring all this one, and the CBN will set up an important department specializing in gold and precious stones, and they will give them a fair value for it. So, and they will now have a ready market instead of smuggling and killing each other over that. And it will help boost even the reserves of the central bank. That is one option we can look at. But of course, this is the time, Nancy, that we need to know who is a Nigerian. and who is not a Nigerian. I suspect that millions of people going about in this country are not bona fide citizens. And they are the ones committing, and I'm not xenophobic, a lot of the crimes, because it's not their country, they feel no emotional attachment, and so they are very clinical in the murders that they commit. So there are very serious problems in this country, and I don't think we are facing those problems with the commitment and the compassion that it requires.
What do you think should be done? Because for me, just like I said, it's something, you know, when the rest of the world also gets to hear or see, it will impede business activity.
Of course.
Economic activities, you can imagine in Zamfara State right now, what is happening, or in southern Kaduna, for example.
Exactly.
Also last week in the news, I was hearing that, was it a pastor, a bishop was killed in church.
Yes.
At the weekend, and we'll say, someone was just saying close to me that they were robbing a church here in Abuja.
That's right, exactly. Exactly.
Robbers entered a church in Abuja, and I'm wondering,
well,
has it gotten to that?
Well,
we are in a serious crisis.
And a bank robber was caught in America, and they asked him, the judge asked him, why did you rob the bank? He said, well, that's where the money is. These days they are going to churches because, you know, people pay a lot of tithes, people pay a lot of, you know, and so on, for the growth of the church, and that is the way it should be. But, you know, criminals and terrorists are targeting those kind of things. The truth is that the whole world knows. There's no news that happens anywhere that people don't know. They already know our condition as a country, that things are very, very bad. And it has been exacerbated by the poverty. What can we do? Of course, there are immediate solutions and there are long-term solutions. First of all, we must go about disarming the rural bandits. We must disarm them. Number two, we probably need to close our borders for a while. Number three, we need to carry out a census of who is a Nigerian and who is a foreigner residing in Nigeria. Because under the ECOWAS protocol, you are supposed to come in for only 3 months. After 3 months, if you are not a citizen, you either regularize your stay or you go back to the country where you came from. But the people are not doing that. Millions are just coming in here, and the next day they're Nigerians. And they're committing every number of crimes that you can imagine. And of course, more immediate and long-term, of course, is to rehabilitate the youth. There are millions of youths today who have become very desperate. Their condition is harrowing. You and I, of course, I know we get all these kind of texts. You're a public figure, and you would get all kinds of public, because they believe you have networks and contacts. Please help me. I have no job. Any job. Somebody with a master's will be asking, even cleaning job, any job. In a situation where we've reached that level, then obviously we are sitting on a powder keg. And if we don't act with the urgency that it requires, honestly speaking, the future of this country is very bleak. And when it comes to Nigeria, I'm normally an optimist. I'm always forever an optimist. But for the first time, I am feeling quite bleak.
Which is unusual.
I look through and I don't see a future for the country. I look through and I don't see hope for the country. Because this hope cannot come from just out of the thin air. It requires leaders who inspire. It requires leaders who articulate a clear vision for the country, who have the fire in their hearts and who have compassion for those who are suffering. This is not the time, in fact, even to be talking, when you mentioned the church and pastors and so on. To us, to me, it's a universal problem. It's a universal problem. And if we love this country, if we believe in the future of this country, we have to stand up and be counted. There is even more poverty in the north than in the south. People are suffering. People are desperate. They are digging in Daura not too long ago. I saw them digging mud and squeezing the water. That's the only water they have in more than 7 kilometers around. It's disease, poverty, illiteracy, and the system has a vested interest in not allowing them to go to school. Not to talk about women that are used almost like cattle. They are property like cattle. Excuse my language. But all of that is going on. And there is no justification from it. I lived in the Arab Muslim world. I traveled widely there. What we are seeing in the north is nothing to do with religion. It's a feudal system of oppression. So, and all of that, and you link it, of course, to the more prosperous south, where also unemployment remains a big problem. Some of the big oil states, they are doing very well. They have a lot of money. The 13%.
But the money is not commensurate to the prosperity in the land.
In Delta, there's so much unemployment. In Bayelsa, there's so much unemployment. Even in Rivers. So, interestingly, the areas that have less unemployment, youth unemployment, are Lagos, the Ogun, Oyo axis, and Anambra, Imo, because the people build their own industries. There's relative peace, but in the north, where people are busy killing each other, slaughtering women and children, nobody's going to put any industries there. So they're destroying themselves by themselves, and we're all paying a very heavy price for it.
The IMF Article 4 consultation on Nigeria said a lot of things.
Sure.
You've gone through the report.
Sure, yes.
Tell me what you think. What are the
Well, I think maybe, Nancy, for the benefit of our viewers, what is Article 4? Article 4 is a chapter in the IMF statutes that were created in 1944, by which the IMF has a responsibility to safeguard global financial stability, economic and financial stability. And to do that effectively, every year a committee of them visits countries and assesses their economic and financial prospects and prepares this report, which they discuss with the authorities, and also it is presented for action by the board of the IMF in Washington, D.C. So early this year, they normally come in January and they spend 5 weeks or so and prepare a draft report which comes out around this time. And I went through it. I think it's on the whole, it's a good report, even though I have reason to take exception to one or two areas, because I don't think it is their duty to be telling us in micro detail what we should do. That, you know, the Monetary Policy Committee should raise the MPR by so much, the CRR by so much. I don't think it is part of their job. They are giving themselves job that nobody asked them for. They are supposed to give us broad guidelines, broad suggestions, and it's an intellectual dialogue. It is a policy dialogue. But having said that, I think I agree with a lot of their diagnosis. First of all, they expect growth to reduce a bit to about 2.2, which, if you consider what is happening now, you know, there's no how growth is going to perform better by miracle. Growth takes place when you invest and when you do the right things, and of course, you generate output, and this output is reflected in GDP. When you have a situation of lawlessness, of geopolitical uncertainty, of heightened risks, nobody wants to invest in such an environment. And in fact, where even the civil service is very weak, the institutional framework is weak for implementation, that will affect, you know, the prospects for growth. So they've reduced the growth for this year to about 2.2. And you see, Nancy, if you realize that our population also grows by 2.2%. In fact, some people say 2.3%. In fact,
it's 3.5% because population growth is more than the GDP growth.
Exactly. So indeed, it is about 3.2, yeah, 3.2. But, and we are growing by 2.2. So, I mean, if you subtract that, you can see that we are actually still going backwards.
Yeah, backwards and negative.
It's still negative growth. So that is one factor. And of course, revenue mobilization remains quite weak and very dicey, especially when we rely over 50% of our revenue from oil. Domestic revenue, at least over 50% comes from oil, or about 50%. But external revenue is still over 90% is derived from oil, which means if anything happens to global oil prices, it affects us almost immediately. That means the risks are higher. And also we need to watch the banks more closely. The non-performing loans are rising very, very high. And curiously enough, it used to be oil sector loans, but they are not the problems now. It's actually energy and power loans. And I suspect they are collecting some of these loans, marrying more wives. They are not investing in the sector. And a lot of people now go almost the whole weekend, no light. Okay? You see, because they've created cash cows where some people are milking the cash cow.
So you don't agree with the Minister of Power and Works and Housing to say that most states of the country have lights 24 hours now, have electricity?
Well, I don't know.
With just what you said.
Yes, indeed. I don't know where the Honorable Minister... I don't know where the Honorable Minister got his facts from, but we are living with it and we are seeing what is happening on ground. And in any case, I respect him. I respect Fashola, but I think that giving him 3 ministries has damaged him. And in fact, it has done his reputation very bad. People no longer respect him as the successful governor of Lagos State. People expected so much for him. But it is clear that he's been overwhelmed, being given power, works, and housing. He's been totally overwhelmed, and he's done very poorly on all those sectors, unfortunately. So let's be very realistic. It has been disastrous. The energy sector has no real policy. It has no real strategic vision. And I hope that this time around we should learn that, look, for such strategic ministries, give one person one portfolio and let them work on it. So
you're saying perhaps the second term of President Buhari, it should be broken down again?
Yeah. Let me tell you somebody that I believe can run that ministry very well. Is the governor of my state, El-Rufai. Give him power sector. In fact, let him stay on it for 10 years. There will be electricity in every village in this country. Why? Because he is a ruthless character. And you need to just give him an assignment. He's not a good politician. In fact, he's not even a politician. He's a projects person. Give him a project and tell him the targets you want. He will execute it more than you expect. Don't expect him to run a country or run a state. He's a complete failure in that because he has no, his E quotient is 0. He has no emotional quotient. He has high IQ, low EQ. But he's an action person, and when you give him a project, he will do it. We need such people in strategic sectors like oil, like power and energy. Don't just give people lawyers who just talk. It's not for them.